I'm going to give about 5 points that come from a multi-stakeholder dialogue process that we've been supporting. It's called the Forest Dialogue. It's independent of any institution. It's not hosted at Yale University, but I co-lead that with a colleague from the World Business Council for Sustainable Development. It's quite unique in a way because it's got the private sector, indigenous peoples, local communities, NGOs, people who often don't see eye to eye. And we've been, ever since Bali, we've been running a process actually trying to identify and build a common cause among this group, identify where we can enhance understanding on key issues that, on RED and how that might be progressed. I would also say that some of this insight is probably a bit more applicable at the national level than at the international level. I'll just bring you sort of through 5 or 6 key points that this group, let's say from large companies through to indigenous people, have worked through and seek consensus. I would also say that this is a consensus of the individuals in this group. I'm not pretending for 1 minute that this represents consensus right across the board, but just of those individuals we had in the room as we worked through and discussed issues, this is what they came out with. First and foremost, I think that RED, or RED Plus, has to be a mainstream part of the climate solution. It's no longer an optional extra. It's no longer part of some flexibility mechanism that Annex 1 countries can use to help them meet their commitments. There's actually, if you look at the figures at the minute, there's a major gap out there. That even, I think some of the more recent estimates reckon that between business as usual and what we need to get onto a plausible stabilisation trajectory, there's about a 17 gigaton gap. And even with all the best will in the world and significant action on fossil fuel reduction, there's still about a 5 gigaton gap. So, RED is no longer just some optional extra. It has to be seen as a mainstream mechanism for helping us get onto a plausible stabilisation trajectory by 2020. The second point that this group came out with was a very strong endorsement of the idea of RED Plus, that RED should be comprehensive in scope. And for several reasons. One, that actually it helps, it maximises the participation of different countries. As Luke said, there's only 5 countries that have got, 90% of the deforestation issues. But there's a lot of other countries that can contribute. The other thing is that by actually being broader in scope can also probably reach and benefit more people on the ground. And certainly a piece of work that another partnership that we're associated with that focuses on the restoration work that we've done recently, we launched last week in London, estimates that there's now probably 1 billion hectares of degraded forest lands that could be restored in some way, maybe plantations, but maybe actually restoring native forest. Some of it will actually be through agroforestry and working with food production systems. So there's a lot of potential out there. I suppose one of the biggest points is that all this potential though cannot be achieved if it doesn't build on the knowledge we've developed and deal with the major roadblocks to sustainable forest management. Now, I'm not going to get into the debate of what is or what is not sustainable forest management here, but I'm going to identify what we know are some of those roadblocks. Number one, which I think Daphne will talk about more, is basic governance arrangements. If we don't have basic governance arrangements in place, that the opportunity of this fantastic potential will be lost. Also, we need full and effective participation of people, particularly local communities, particularly indigenous peoples, and right through the whole phase, not just when we're starting to strike deals, but from RED readiness through to dealing with sorting out policies, and then eventually down into when RED deals are struck. Absolutely critically, there has to be clarity in rights and tenure. And this is a very interesting convergence with the private sector and indigenous people and local communities. that if there's lack of clarity on the issues of rights and tenure, that we will not be able to move forward. And finally, that we need an issue of adequate and predictable finance. The one other thing that comes up, and I think we'll go into detail, and Lou has mentioned this before, is there has to be real clarity in distributional mechanisms on how funds are going to flow down to and benefit the people who live on and dwell off and look after forests. Okay, thanks.
Okay, thanks very much, Stuart.